Welcome to the English Pod community. I'm Natasha, and today we're diving into an exciting episode that will help improve your listening and writing skills. How? Well, by listening to some real-life stories and examples that will not only help you understand everyday English, but also improve your ability to express yourself in writing. Before we start, I have a couple of questions for you. Have you ever had an unexpected situation in your life that taught you something valuable? Or maybe you've been in a situation where you didn't know what to say but had to think on the spot. Well, today's episode will feature stories just like these, stories that you might relate to, and that will help you build your English skills through real experiences. Now, if you're new here, welcome. On the English Pod community, we upload new content every day to help you improve your English skills. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get started. Today we're going to talk about something many of us have experienced: making decisions. Let me tell you a story from my own life that will give us some good practice in listening and understanding. A few years ago, I was at a crossroads. I had to decide whether to move to a new city for work or stay where I was with my family. At ER. First, it was really hard to decide because both options had their pros and cons. On one hand, the new city had great job opportunities, but on the other hand, I loved being close to my family. It was a tough decision. One evening, I had a long talk with my husband. We discussed everything: what I would gain, what I might lose. After talking for hours, we agreed that the best decision for me was to take the job and see where it would lead. And you know what? It turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. This story is a perfect example of how we all face big decisions in life. Sometimes we don't know what to do, and it can be hard to talk about it. But the way I made my decision was by really thinking about what mattered most to me at that moment. It's the same when you're learning English. You need to focus on what will help you communicate clearly in any situation. Let me share another story from a friend of mine, Emily. Emily recently moved to a new country. She didn't know anyone, and she didn't speak the language very well. But one day, she was at a market, and she needed help finding a product. She decided to ask a stranger for help, even though she was nervous. She used simple English, and the person helped her without any problems. After that, Emily realized something important. She had been afraid of making mistakes, but the truth was, the more she practiced, the better she got. Now let's pause for a moment. Did you notice how Emily didn't let fear stop her from speaking? She made a decision to ask for help, and that helped her improve. This is an important lesson for all of us in learning English. The more you practice speaking, the better you'll get, and you'll feel more confident every time. Another example comes from my own life. Last year, my husband and I decided to renovate our kitchen. It wasn't an easy decision because we didn't know how much it would cost, and we didn't want to deal with the mess. But after thinking it through and weighing the pros and cons, we decided it would be worth it. We were both excited about the possibility of having a beautiful new kitchen where we could cook and enjoy meals together. The decision wasn't easy, but it brought us closer together, and now we love our new kitchen. This story shows how decisions can affect our lives in many ways. It's not just about work or big changes like moving to a new place. It's about everyday choices, like deciding to improve your English. Sometimes it's the little things that make a big difference. So think about it. When was the last time you had to make a decision? Maybe it was about studying English more. Seriously, or maybe it was about practicing a new skill. Whatever it was, remember that every decision shapes your life in some way. Now I want you to think about your own experiences. How do you make decisions in your life? Do you talk to family or friends? Do you like to weigh the pros and cons like I did with my job decision? Let me know in the comments below. In this episode, we've shared stories that teach us how decisions play a big role in our lives. I hope that as you listen to these stories, you feel more confident in your English skills. By practicing listening to real-life situations, you're also improving your ability to speak and write in English. Keep listening to the English Pod community, and remember, the more you listen, the better you'll become. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll continue to practice with stories, real experiences, and helpful tips. Let me tell you about Daniel. He's a friend of mine who works as a bus driver. Every day he meets different people, and sometimes they ask him questions in English. A few years ago, Daniel was not confident with his speaking. He often avoided answering people in English because he was afraid of making mistakes. But one day something changed. A tourist asked him for directions, and there was no one else around to help. Daniel had no choice but to speak. He used simple words and short sentences, and the tourist understood him. That moment gave him a boost of confidence. From then on, he started learning 5 new English words every day. He even kept a small notebook in his pocket to write them down. Now Daniel speaks English with confidence. He told me, "I just needed to start. The more I practiced, the easier it became." So, what can we learn from Daniel's story? Sometimes we wait for the perfect moment to start learning or practicing something, but that perfect moment might never come. Instead, we should start small, just like Daniel, and take simple steps each day. Let's look at another situation. Sarah is a stay-at-home mother with 2 children. She wanted to improve her English so she could help her kids with school and speak with their teachers. At first, she felt nervous. She thought, what if I say something wrong? What if they don't understand me? But instead of waiting, she started practicing with her husband every evening. They would choose a topic, like food, cleaning, or school, and speak about it for just 10 minutes a day. After a few weeks, Sarah started to feel more confident. When it was time for a parent-teacher meeting, she spoke in English and explained everything clearly. Sarah told me, "I used to feel scared, but now I feel proud. Speaking English helps me connect with others and support my family." Her story shows us how learning English isn't just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about being able to share your ideas, ask questions, and build relationships with the people around you. Now I want you to ask yourself, have you ever avoided speaking English because you were afraid of making a mistake? What if you tried? Just one small conversation a day. What could happen if you made a habit of speaking, even for a few minutes? Let me give you one more example. James works in a small shop. One day, a customer came in and didn't speak the local language. James used simple English to ask what they needed. The customer smiled and said, "Thank you. You helped me so much." James said that moment stayed in his heart. He felt proud and decided to keep practicing so he could help more people in the future. He started listening to English podcasts every morning on his way to work. He didn't understand every word at first, but he kept going. After a month, he said he could understand more and even started speaking more fluently. Just like James, you can use everyday moments to improve. You don't need a perfect classroom or a teacher next to you all the time. You just need the will to start and the courage to keep going. If you're listening to this and thinking, "I want to speak better English too," then let these stories remind you, small steps matter, and you don't have to do it alone. We are here in this community learning together every day. We've talked about how small decisions in daily life can help you improve your English. Now, I want to tell you a longer story that brings all of this together. It's about a man named Thomas. He's 45 years old, works as a delivery driver, and lives in a small town with his wife and 2 daughters. A few years ago, Thomas decided He wanted to learn English, not for work, not for school, but for his family. One day, his oldest daughter came home from school with a letter from her teacher. The letter was in English, and Thomas didn't understand most of it. He had to wait until his wife came home to help him read it. That moment made him feel a little sad. He wanted to be able to help his children, not wait for someone else. That's when he made the decision to learn English, starting from the basics. Now, Thomas didn't have much free time. He worked long hours, and when he got home, he was tired. But he found little moments to learn. While waiting at a traffic light, he listened to short English sentences on his phone. During his lunch breaks, he practiced common phrases like, "How are you?" and "Where is the nearest store?" At home, he asked his daughters to speak to him in English for 5 minutes a day. At first, they laughed because he made small mistakes, but he didn't give up. After 6 months, something changed. His youngest daughter had a school event, and Thomas was asked to speak to the teacher. This time, he didn't wait for his wife. He smiled, greeted the teacher, and explained in English that he was proud of his daughter's progress. The teacher smiled back and said, "Your English is good. Keep going." That small conversation gave Thomas a big push. He felt like all those little moments he used for practice had finally paid off. What Thomas learned was something important. Progress is slow, but it's real. You don't have to study for hours every day. You just have to stay consistent. A few minutes here, a short conversation there, it all adds up. Now let's talk about another story. This one is about Anna. She's 30 years old and works at a bakery with her husband. One day they had a group of customers from another country who spoke only English. Anna wanted to welcome them, but she didn't feel confident, so she smiled, but didn't say much. After they left, she felt disappointed. She said to her husband, "I wish I could have spoken with them, even just a few words." Her husband said, "Why don't we learn together?" So they made a small plan. Every evening, before bed, they would learn 5 English words and use them in simple sentences. They turned it into a daily habit. Instead of watching videos or scrolling on their phones, they sat down and practiced together. 1 month later, more tourists came to their bakery. This time, Anna smiled and said, "Welcome. Would you like to try our special bread?" The customers were surprised and happy. One of them said, "Your English is very good." Anna smiled all day after that. She told me, "That one sentence gave me more energy than anything else." Anna's story teaches us that learning English is not just about speaking perfectly. It's about connection. When you speak to someone and they understand you, it builds trust and confidence. Even small phrases like "How are you?" or "Can I help you?" can open doors to new friendships and new experiences. Let's look at another situation. This one is about William, a 38-year-old farmer. He lives in a quiet village, and English was never something he thought he needed. But then his brother, who lives in another country, invited him to visit. William knew that if he traveled, he would need to use English at the airport, in restaurants, and when meeting new people. At first, William said, "I'm too old to learn." But his brother told him, "You're never too old to grow." So, William started learning slowly. He listened to English on the radio while working in the fields. He repeated sentences out loud, even if no one was around. He wrote down new words in a notebook and asked his wife to test him every evening. The first time William tried to speak English at a train station, he was nervous. But he took a deep breath and said, "I am looking for platform 3. The man at the station understood and gave him the right directions. William told me later, "That small success made me feel like a new man." His story reminds us that English is a tool. It's not about being perfect. It's about being able to ask for help, give directions, and understand others. Every time you practice, you build that tool stronger. Now take a moment to think about your own journey. Are you like Thomas, using small pockets of time to study while working hard? Or maybe like Anna, learning with your husband or wife to connect better with people around you? Or perhaps like William, learning for a future trip or family visit? No matter where you are in your English journey, the key is the same. Keep going, one step at a time. Use the time you have. Speak even when you feel unsure. Ask simple questions. Answer with short, clear phrases. Every word you speak builds your confidence. Every sentence you hear makes your ear stronger. And every mistake teaches you something new. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. Let's dive even deeper into this topic of learning English through everyday decisions and situations. It's a fascinating journey, and I want to tell you even more stories that show how the simple choices we make each day can help us become more confident in speaking English. First, let's talk about Emma. Emma is 28 years old, and she's a teacher in a local school. A few years ago, Emma was struggling with English. Even though she had learned some in school, she didn't feel confident speaking. She could understand the language when reading, but when it came to speaking or listening, she was nervous and hesitant. She'd often find herself avoiding conversations in English, even when she needed to use it at work or with friends. But one day, something changed. Emma decided that she didn't want to let fear hold her back anymore. She decided to challenge herself to speak English for just 10 minutes every day. At first, this felt difficult. She was worried about making mistakes, worried about being misunderstood. But she made a promise to herself. She would push through her fear and speak every single day. She started small. Every morning before work, Emma would practice speaking English with her husband, Jack. They'd talk about their day ahead or even chat about their plans for the weekend. Jack would listen carefully, correct her gently if she made a mistake, and encourage her to keep going. At first, Emma felt embarrassed when she made mistakes, but Jack always reminded her that everyone makes mistakes. What mattered was that she kept trying. After a few weeks of practicing this way, Emma started feeling more confident. She noticed that she was using more complex sentences and that her pronunciation was improving. Soon, Emma was able to speak English more fluently, even with her students at school. The next time she had to give a lesson in English, she felt more comfortable and prepared. She told me, "I used to be scared of speaking, but now I feel proud when I talk in English. It's not about being perfect, it's about communicating." Emma's story teaches us an important lesson. Confidence doesn't come overnight. It's something you build with practice, even in small moments. By setting aside time to speak each day, Emma was able to overcome her fear and gain the confidence she needed to speak English in front of her students and colleagues. Now let's talk about another story, this one about David. David is 35 years old and he works as a graphic designer. His company works with international clients, and while he was comfortable reading and writing in English, he struggled with listening and speaking. He often found himself listening to meetings and not understanding everything. He'd write down notes in English, but when it came time to speak, he felt nervous. He didn't want to make a mistake, especially in front of his colleagues. One day, David's manager asked him to attend a video conference with a client from the United States. David immediately felt a wave of panic. What if I don't understand the client's questions? What if I can't answer in time? He thought. But instead of avoiding the situation, he decided to take action. David thought about the fact that avoiding English wouldn't help him grow, so he decided to make a plan. He started listening to podcasts in English during his commute to work. At first, it was difficult. He didn't understand everything, and he had to replay sections several times. But he didn't give up. Every day, he spent 20 minutes listening to different podcasts, sometimes about technology, other times about business. Over time, he started to understand more. He also began writing down new vocabulary and phrases he heard during the podcasts and practiced them with his wife, Lily, every evening. When the video conference with the client came, David was nervous, but ready. During the meeting, he listened carefully and asked a few questions. Even though he didn't understand everything at first, he didn't panic. He used the skills he had been practicing. If he didn't understand something, he would ask the client to repeat it, or he would say, "Could you explain that again, please?" David also used phrases he had learned from his podcasts, which made him feel more confident. After the meeting, David felt proud of himself. He didn't let his fear control him. He took small steps each day to improve, and those small steps added up to real progress. David told me, "I still make mistakes, but that's okay. What matters is that I'm able to communicate and get the job done." David's story shows that we don't need to be fluent in English to succeed. What's important is that we keep practicing and don't let our fears stop us. Each day of practice, whether it's listening to a podcast, writing down vocabulary, or speaking with a friend or family member, helps us improve our skills. It's the consistent effort over time that makes the difference. Now, let's move on to another story. This one is about Rachel. Rachel is a 40-year-old nurse who works at a hospital. English is not her first language, and she often feels nervous speaking with her colleagues from other countries. There are many patients who speak English, and Rachel needs to communicate with them to understand their symptoms and explain treatments. However, she often felt unsure of her English, and sometimes she would avoid talking to patients because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to explain things clearly. Rachel's husband, Tom, encouraged her to improve her English skills. "Why don't we practice together every evening?" he suggested. So Rachel and Tom began setting aside 15 minutes each night to practice speaking English. They would choose a topic such as health, family, or work, and they'd have simple conversations in English. Rachel's confidence grew slowly, and she started feeling more comfortable using English at work. One day, a patient came in who only spoke English. Rachel was assigned to take care of him, and at first, she was nervous. She remembered the words and phrases she had practiced with Tom and decided to just start speaking. She introduced herself and explained the medical procedures in simple English. To her surprise, the patient understood everything, and she felt a huge sense of relief. After that experience, Rachel told me, "I was so afraid before, but now I see that it's not about speaking perfectly. It's about being able to help people and make them feel comfortable. That's what matters." Rachel's story is a powerful reminder that learning English is not just for personal growth. It can help us in our jobs, our communities, and in our ability to help others. Like Rachel, many of us might feel hesitant or nervous about speaking, but it's the action we take that builds our confidence. Let's move on to another story, one about Mike. Mike is a 25-year-old student who just started university. He's living in a new city, and English is the language of instruction at his school. At first, Mike struggled to follow lectures, especially when the professors spoke quickly. He found it difficult to keep up, and sometimes he would feel lost during class discussions. But Mike didn't want to give up. He knew that in order to succeed in his studies, he needed to improve his English listening skills. So he made a plan. He began watching English language videos about his subjects on YouTube. He would listen to the videos with subtitles, so he could see the words while hearing them. At the same time, he made sure to review his notes every evening and try to write down new vocabulary words that he didn't understand. After a few weeks, Mike noticed something amazing. He could follow the lectures more easily. He began understanding what the professors were saying without needing to pause or rewind the videos. He felt more confident answering questions in class, and his grades started to improve. Mike shared his experience with me, saying, "I never thought I'd be able to keep up with everything. But by practicing a little every day, I've been able to understand more. It's all about staying consistent." Mike's story teaches us that learning English is not about perfection. It's about persistence. Even if things feel hard at first, keep going. Every bit of practice, whether it's watching videos, reading, or listening to podcasts, helps you improve. And remember, everyone's journey is different. What works for one person might not work for you, but the important thing is that you find a method that fits your life and goals. Just like Thomas, Anna, David, Rachel, and Mike, you can make progress by taking small steps every day. It's all about being consistent and not being afraid to make mistakes. Let's continue exploring how small daily actions can help improve our English listening and speaking skills. I want to share even more stories of real people who, just like you, have faced challenges in learning English but made incredible progress by sticking to small, consistent steps. Now, let's talk about John. John is a 32-year-old engineer, and, like many others, he uses English every day at work. He communicates with colleagues around the world and often reads technical documents in English. However, when it came to speaking during meetings or discussions, he felt nervous. He would often stumble over words or freeze when it was his turn to speak. This made him feel less confident and at times frustrated. One day, John's manager asked him to lead a meeting with a team of engineers from another country. John was terrified. He was nervous about his ability to speak clearly and understand the other team members' English as they spoke with a heavy accent. Instead of avoiding the task, John decided to take action. He knew that the only way he could succeed was by improving his listening and speaking skills. John began listening to podcasts related to engineering. He would listen for about 30 minutes every morning on his way to work. At first, he didn't understand everything, but he didn't let that stop him. He made a habit of writing down new words and phrases, and every evening he would ask his wife, Sarah, to quiz him. This routine helped him build his vocabulary and gain confidence in his understanding of technical terms. As the day of the meeting approached, John felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He decided to speak with his colleagues in the meeting as if he were just having a normal conversation. He reminded himself that everyone makes mistakes when speaking a second language. When the meeting started, John took a deep breath, listened carefully to the other engineers, and then spoke slowly and clearly when it was his turn. He even asked his colleagues to repeat certain points when he didn't fully understand. To his surprise, the team was very supportive, and the meeting went smoothly. Afterward, John felt an incredible sense of achievement. He realized that his fear of speaking English had been holding him back. But with practice, he could handle difficult situations like this. John told me, "It's not about speaking perfectly. It's about communicating effectively. The more I practiced listening and speaking, the more confident I became." John's story is a great example of how we can overcome our fears by putting in consistent effort. Even when faced with a difficult task, we can improve through regular practice and by taking small steps. What's important is that we face challenges head-on, just as John did, and realize that mistakes are a part of the learning process. Next, let me tell you about Olivia. Olivia is 26 years old and works as a social worker. She's passionate about helping others, but she often struggled when it came to speaking English with the people she helps. Olivia works with families from different backgrounds, and many of them speak English as a second language. She needed to communicate with them clearly, but sometimes she found it difficult to understand their accents or express herself in a way that made sense to them. Olivia knew that she had to work on her English if she wanted to be more effective in her job. She started by listening to English podcasts that focused on social work and human rights topics. Olivia would listen to these podcasts during her lunch breaks and take notes on new vocabulary words. Afterward, she would practice using the words in sentences while speaking with her husband, James, who was always encouraging her to keep going. One evening, Olivia's manager asked her to give a presentation in English to a group of parents. Olivia was nervous, but she didn't want to turn down the opportunity to improve her speaking skills. She prepared for the presentation by writing a script in English and practicing it several times with James. He would ask her questions after each practice session, and Olivia would answer in English, trying to speak more fluently each time. On the day of the presentation, Olivia felt a bit anxious, but she reminded herself that she had prepared well. When it was her turn to speak, Olivia took a deep breath and started her presentation. She spoke clearly and slowly, making sure to enunciate each word. When some parents had difficulty understanding, Olivia repeated her points and used simple words to explain. After the presentation, her manager praised her for her efforts, and Olivia felt proud of what she had accomplished. Olivia shared with me, "The first time I gave a presentation in English, I was terrified. But now I see that it's about practicing and not being afraid to make mistakes. I've become more comfortable in my work." Olivia's story shows us that practice and preparation are key. Even when we're faced with challenges or situations that make us nervous, we can overcome them by practicing regularly and not letting fear stop us. Olivia didn't give up on herself, and as a result, she was able to gain confidence in her English and improve her communication skills. Now, let's talk about Alex. Alex is 22 years old and just moved to an English-speaking country for university. He had learned English in school, but when he arrived at his new university, he quickly realized that his listening and speaking skills weren't as strong as he thought. He struggled to follow lectures, especially when the professors spoke quickly, and he felt uncomfortable speaking with classmates, afraid that they wouldn't understand him. Instead of feeling discouraged, Alex decided to take action. He made it a goal to listen to English every day. Every morning, while walking to class, he would listen to English podcasts about university life. He would also listen to his professors carefully during lectures, taking notes and looking up words he didn't understand. He made sure to ask questions during class when something wasn't clear, and he practiced speaking with his classmates after lessons. Alex also started joining study groups with other students who spoke English as a second language. These groups would meet weekly to discuss their coursework, and Alex would practice speaking with them. He found that this helped him improve his listening skills because he was exposed to different accents and speaking speeds. With time, he became more comfortable speaking in class, and even began contributing more to discussions. A few months later, Alex gave a presentation in front of his class. He had been practicing his speaking skills every day, and although he was nervous, he felt confident enough to speak clearly and explain his ideas. Afterward, his professor praised him for his improvement, and Alex felt proud of how far he had come. Alex's story shows us that improvement takes time, but with consistent practice, we can make great progress. By exposing ourselves to English every day, whether through podcasts, conversations, or classes, we can become more comfortable with the language and gain the confidence we need to succeed. Let's take a look at one more story, this time about Charlotte. Charlotte is 30 years old and she works in marketing. She frequently communicates with clients and partners in English, but she often found it difficult to understand their emails or phone calls. Sometimes she would feel embarrassed about asking them to repeat themselves, so she would pretend to understand, even though she didn't. Charlotte knew that this wasn't a sustainable way to improve, so she decided to take action. She started by listening to business podcasts during her morning routine, focusing on marketing and communication topics. Charlotte also began watching English language videos about marketing strategies, taking notes on the vocabulary and phrases used. She then started practicing with her husband, Tom, by having conversations about work-related topics in English. As Charlotte continued to practice, she felt more confident in her ability to understand her clients. One day, she had a phone call with an important client from the United States. During the conversation, Charlotte was able to understand everything the client said and respond clearly. She didn't have to ask the client to repeat anything, and the conversation went smoothly. Charlotte told me, "The first time I had a business call in English, I was nervous. But now, I feel more comfortable. I've learned that it's about practice and persistence, not perfection." Charlotte's story teaches us that, in the professional world, we don't have to be perfect to succeed. The key is to keep practicing and exposing ourselves to the language regularly. By doing this, we can improve our listening and speaking skills and feel more confident in professional settings. Each of these stories shows how consistent practice, exposure to English, and the willingness to step outside our comfort zones can lead to real improvement. Whether you're practicing speaking with a friend, listening to podcasts during your commute, or participating in discussions at work or school, every bit of practice adds up. Even when it feels challenging, remember that progress is possible. You just need to take it one step at a time, as these real-life examples show. Let's continue exploring more real-life examples of how learning English can be improved through small, everyday steps. I'll share some more stories from people who've faced similar challenges and managed to make impressive progress by staying consistent with their practice. Let's start with David. David is 28 years old and works as a software developer. He had learned English back in school, but when he started working with international clients, he realized his English skills weren't as strong as he thought. His job required him to understand complex technical discussions in English, and he had to write detailed reports and emails for clients. Although he could understand most of the technical jargon, he often found it hard to express his thoughts clearly in English. David decided that he needed to focus on improving his English communication skills to succeed in his job. He started by listening to podcasts related to software development. Every morning, while jogging in the park, David would listen to a 20-minute podcast episode on the latest trends in technology. The first few weeks were difficult, but he stuck with it, even though he didn't understand every word. He found that by listening regularly, he started to pick up new technical vocabulary and get used to the pace at which native speakers talked. Soon, David felt more confident when he joined video calls with his international clients. He started taking notes during the meetings to make sure he understood the key points. And when he didn't understand something, he would ask politely for clarification. This small step helped David improve his comprehension significantly. But what really boosted his speaking skills was his decision to start speaking to his colleagues in English whenever possible. At first, he was hesitant, but after a few weeks of consistent practice, he was able to communicate more confidently during team discussions. His colleagues noticed his improvement and praised him for his dedication. David's story shows that persistence is key. By listening to English daily, even for short periods, David gradually improved his comprehension and speaking skills. It wasn't about speaking perfectly right away. It was about consistently exposing himself to English and making a habit of using it in real-life situations. Next, let's talk about Emily. Emily is 35 years old and works as a nurse. She moved to an English-speaking country to continue her medical career. Even though she had studied English in her home country, she found it difficult to understand medical terms and communicate with patients, especially during emergencies. She would often feel nervous because she was afraid of making mistakes and not being understood. Emily knew that to perform her job effectively, she needed to be able to communicate clearly and confidently in English. So, she made a plan. Emily began by watching videos of medical procedures in English, which helped her familiarize herself with the vocabulary. She started with short, simple videos and gradually moved on to more complex ones. Emily would take notes on the medical terminology and try to use the words in sentences when talking to her husband, Ben, who is a teacher. In addition to this, Emily started shadowing medical podcasts, where she would repeat sentences after the speaker to practice her pronunciation. This method is great for improving fluency because it helps you get used to the rhythm and flow of the language. Emily did this for about 15 minutes each day before her shift at the hospital. One day, Emily was faced with a challenging situation when a patient who spoke only English came into the emergency room. The patient was in pain and needed urgent care, but Emily had to explain the situation clearly and quickly. She took a deep breath, remembered her practice, and communicated clearly with the patient. She asked questions in a calm, confident manner and was able to provide the best care. Afterward, Emily realized that her daily practice had helped her build the confidence she needed to handle such situations. Emily shared with me, "When I first started working here, I was so scared of making mistakes. But now I know that every bit of practice helps me improve. I've learned that it's okay to make mistakes as long as you keep trying and practicing." Emily's story teaches us the importance of exposure to real-life situations and consistent practice. She was able to overcome her fear of speaking English by making a habit of listening and speaking every day, and this helped her become more confident in her professional environment. Let's move on to Ben's story. Ben is a 40-year-old lawyer who works in an international law firm. Ben's job requires him to deal with contracts and legal documents in English. Although he was comfortable with reading legal terms in English, he found it difficult to understand spoken English in legal meetings or to speak confidently when discussing legal matters with clients. Ben knew that his listening skills were holding him back, so he started looking for ways to improve. He began listening to legal podcasts in English, focusing on topics like international law, human rights, and business law. Ben would listen to these podcasts during his commute to work, paying attention to the terminology and trying to get used to the speed of native speakers. At the same time, Ben began watching webinars and attending online conferences to practice understanding legal discussions in English. He would write down new terms and phrases, and after the event, he would review his notes and try to use the vocabulary in his daily conversations. Ben also started practicing speaking with his colleagues in English. He joined a weekly discussion group at his office where lawyers would talk about current legal issues in English. This helped Ben improve his ability to explain legal concepts more clearly. After participating in these discussions, Ben found that he was more comfortable speaking with clients and answering their questions. One day, Ben had to explain a complex legal issue to an international client. Thanks to his preparation, he was able to do so confidently and clearly. His client appreciated how well he communicated, and Ben felt proud of his progress. Ben's story is a great reminder that improving our listening and speaking skills doesn't always require a major change in routine. Small adjustments, like listening to podcasts during commutes or joining conversation groups, can make a big difference in building confidence and fluency. Let's now talk about Mark. Mark is 50 years old and works as a manager in a multinational company. He was born in an English-speaking country, but his native language is different from the one spoken by most of his colleagues. Although Mark spoke English fluently, he found it difficult to understand some of the different accents of his colleagues, especially when they spoke quickly. Mark realized that in order to communicate effectively in his job, he needed to be able to understand different accents and improve his listening skills. He started by watching English language news shows and listening to interviews with people from different countries. Mark made an effort to listen to various accents, American, British, Australian, and others, so he could get used to the differences in pronunciation and speech patterns. Mark also began practicing speaking with colleagues from different countries, asking them to slow down when they spoke if he had trouble understanding them. Over time, Mark's ability to understand various accents improved significantly. He was even able to engage in meaningful discussions with colleagues from different parts of the world without needing to ask for clarification constantly. One day, Mark had a conference call with colleagues from several countries, and he felt confident in his ability to understand everyone. The call went smoothly, and Mark was able to contribute effectively to the discussion. He realized that by actively practicing listening and speaking with people from different backgrounds, he had gained a deeper understanding of the language. Mark's experience highlights the importance of not only practicing English, but also practicing with different accents and speech patterns. This exposure helps improve comprehension and communication skills, which is essential for both personal and professional growth. Finally, let's hear about Helen. Helen is 27 years old and works as a graphic designer. She enjoys learning languages and decided to improve her English because she wanted to work with international clients. Helen often struggled when communicating with clients who spoke quickly or had strong accents. She wanted to improve her listening and speaking skills so that she could understand her clients better and explain her design ideas clearly. Helen began by listening to design podcasts in English. She would listen to one episode every morning while drinking her coffee. The podcasts were focused on design trends, tools, and techniques, and Helen found them really interesting. She made sure to note down new design-related vocabulary and used them when talking about her work. Helen also practiced speaking by joining design communities online, where members would chat about new trends and techniques. Speaking with fellow designers in English helped her improve her fluency and confidence. Over time, Helen became more comfortable understanding different accents and expressing her ideas clearly in English. One day, Helen had a meeting with an international client. The client had a strong accent, but thanks to her consistent practice, Helen was able to understand everything the client said and respond confidently. The meeting was a success, and Helen felt a great sense of accomplishment. Helen's story shows that by finding topics we're passionate about, like design in Helen's case, we can make learning English both enjoyable and effective. Consistent exposure to English, even if it's just for 15-20 minutes a day, can lead to real improvement over time. These stories show that improving our English listening and speaking skills takes time, but it's possible with consistent practice. Whether it's through listening to podcasts, watching videos, or having conversations with others, every bit of practice adds up and helps us become more confident and fluent. Just like David, Emily, Ben, Mark, and Helen, you can overcome any challenge by continuing to practice and never giving up. Let's continue our journey into real-life stories that highlight how regular practice can improve English skills. As we move forward, I'll focus on how different individuals tackled the challenges of improving their English listening and speaking abilities, making their experiences relatable and motivational for you. Let's talk about Sarah, a 30-year-old marketing professional who works at a digital agency. Sarah had always struggled with English listening comprehension. Even though she had a solid grasp of grammar and vocabulary, she often found it difficult to follow conversations in meetings, especially when her colleagues from different countries spoke quickly. Sarah realized that in order to progress in her career, she needed to improve her ability to understand spoken English, particularly during team calls and presentations. Sarah's first step was to start listening to podcasts during her commute. However, she didn't just pick random topics. Since she worked in marketing, she chose podcasts related to digital marketing, branding, and advertising. She would listen to episodes about the latest trends and strategies, paying attention to the way the hosts explained complex ideas in simple English. She also found it helpful to listen to podcasts at a slower speed at first. This allowed her to absorb the information more effectively without feeling overwhelmed. At the same time, Sarah began to participate in English-speaking webinars on marketing. She realized that listening to live conversations where people interact in real time was even more beneficial than just listening to recorded podcasts. Webinars forced her to engage with the material immediately and actively. Even if she didn't understand every word, Sarah made sure to take notes, focusing on key phrases and terminology. After the webinars, she reviewed the notes and made sure she understood the meanings of any new words. One thing Sarah did to improve her speaking was to start practicing with her colleague James, who was a native English speaker. They would spend 10-15 minutes after lunch talking about marketing topics. They would often discuss marketing campaigns they admired or trends they thought were important. In these conversations, Sarah worked on her speaking skills by using the vocabulary she had learned from podcasts and webinars. She made sure to ask James for feedback on how she could improve her pronunciation or how to express her ideas more clearly in English. Over time, Sarah noticed a significant improvement in her comprehension. She no longer felt nervous during meetings or client calls. Her listening had improved, and she was able to contribute more actively to discussions. Sarah's story shows us that you don't need to start with huge changes to improve your listening skills. Consistent, small efforts like listening to podcasts, attending webinars, and engaging in conversations can add up and make a big difference. Now let's talk about another story, that of Tom, a 45-year-old architect. Tom had always been proficient in reading and writing English, but he struggled with speaking, especially in business meetings where he had to discuss design concepts and negotiate with international clients. He felt that his speaking skills weren't at the level he wanted them to be, and that affected his confidence. To improve, Tom decided to make listening and speaking practice part of his daily routine. Every day, after work, he spent 20 minutes listening to podcasts on architecture. These podcasts were designed for architects and often included discussions on the latest trends, building techniques, and architectural designs. Tom found these podcasts not only informative, but also a great way to pick up professional vocabulary in his field. He listened carefully to how the hosts described complex structures, explaining them in clear, understandable language. In addition to listening, Tom also wanted to improve his speaking. He didn't want to just learn vocabulary. He needed to practice speaking in a professional context. He started recording himself discussing architecture, pretending he was explaining a project to a client or discussing designs with a colleague. After recording, Tom would listen to himself and evaluate his speaking. He would focus on areas where he could improve his fluency, pronunciation, and clarity. One day, Tom was tasked with presenting a new building design to a potential client. He had been preparing for this moment for weeks, practicing his presentation in English every day. When the day came, Tom felt confident. The presentation went smoothly, and the client was impressed with how clearly he communicated his ideas. Tom realized that the consistent practice he had done, listening to architecture podcasts, recording his speeches, and speaking with colleagues, had paid off. Tom's story highlights the importance of not just listening, but also practicing speaking in real-life situations. Whether it's recording yourself, talking to colleagues, or giving presentations, speaking practice can build confidence and fluency over time. Let's look at another example. Jessica, a 25-year-old financial analyst. Jessica had been working at a multinational company for 2 years, but she noticed that despite her excellent reading and writing skills, she struggled with understanding her colleagues' accents during meetings. Many of her colleagues came from different parts of the world, and sometimes the variety of accents would confuse her. Jessica knew that this issue was holding her back, especially when it came to presenting reports and discussing financial trends in English. Jessica decided to take action. She subscribed to several financial podcasts and started listening to them during her morning commute. At first, she found it challenging to understand all the financial terminology, but she didn't give up. She made it a point to listen to these podcasts every day and take notes on the new phrases and words she heard. She also started listening to recordings of international conference calls to get used to the different accents. This helped her recognize different speech patterns, which was crucial in understanding the variety of English accents she encountered at work. To improve her speaking skills, Jessica started practicing with her husband, David. David was also an English speaker, but he had a different accent, which helped Jessica practice understanding various pronunciations. They would talk about financial topics at home, discussing stock market trends, economic news, and investments. At first, Jessica felt nervous, but over time she gained confidence. She began to feel comfortable discussing complex financial matters in English without second-guessing herself. After a few months of daily practice, Jessica felt like a completely different person in meetings. She understood her colleagues better, contributed to discussions more confidently, and even helped lead a meeting. The practice she did with podcasts, conversations with David, and listening to international conference calls had made a huge difference. Jessica's story shows that understanding different accents and mastering specific vocabulary related to your field can be achieved by committing to a daily practice routine. Now, let's dive into the experience of Jack, a 32-year-old teacher. Jack had taught English for many years, but he felt that his own listening skills were not as sharp as they should be. Despite teaching others how to speak and listen in English, he struggled when it came to understanding fast speech or different accents. Jack realized that if he wanted to continue improving both his teaching and his personal English skills, he had to take action. Jack decided to start listening to news reports in English. He began by listening to one news story every morning, taking notes on the main points. The news stories helped him with everyday vocabulary, and he appreciated how the reporters spoke clearly, providing a good model for pronunciation. Jack would listen to these news reports during his morning workout, which was a great way to combine language practice with physical activity. After a few weeks of listening to news reports, Jack felt that he had improved his comprehension. However, he still struggled with understanding fast conversations. To tackle this, Jack began watching TED Talks. He chose topics that were interesting to him, such as education and technology. By watching these talks, Jack was exposed to a variety of speakers, each with their own unique accent and speaking speed. This helped him adjust to different speaking styles. The real breakthrough came when Jack decided to practice speaking with his students in class. He encouraged his students to speak in English during class discussions, and he would lead debates on various topics. This gave Jack the opportunity to practice speaking in real time and helped him get used to speaking English more fluently. Jack's story demonstrates that improving English skills, especially listening and speaking, requires dedication and a variety of practice methods. Whether it's listening to the news, watching educational talks, or engaging in class discussions, Jack's commitment to improving his skills paid off. As you can see from the stories of Sarah, Tom, Jessica, and Jack, improving your English listening and speaking skills doesn't have to be difficult or overwhelming. The key is consistency. By exposing yourself to English every day through podcasts, webinars, conversations, and real-life situations, you can gradually build your confidence and fluency. All of these stories show that anyone can improve their English with consistent practice and determination. Let's keep going with more stories of people who have worked hard to improve their English, specifically focusing on how small, consistent efforts can make a huge difference over time. I'll also highlight some practical tips and strategies that these individuals used, which you can apply in your own learning journey. Let me introduce you to David, a 38-year-old software developer. David had been working in the tech industry for over 10 years, but he noticed that his English communication skills were holding him back. While he was great at coding and writing technical documents, he often struggled to communicate his ideas clearly in meetings or during video conferences with clients. Many of his clients and team members were from English-speaking countries, and he felt frustrated when he couldn't express himself as clearly as he wanted to. David realized that in order to move up in his career, he needed to improve both his listening and speaking skills. So, he set himself a goal to improve his English communication skills by practicing every day. But he didn't want to overwhelm himself with too many new activities. Instead, he decided to focus on one thing at a time, making small improvements along the way. His first step was to start listening to podcasts related to software development and technology. David knew that listening to podcasts in his field would not only help him improve his general listening skills, but also expand his professional vocabulary. He found several podcasts that discussed new programming languages, software development techniques, and tech trends. At first, David found it challenging to understand all the technical vocabulary, but he didn't give up. He listened to each episode twice, the first time just to get the general idea, and the second time with the goal of focusing on specific vocabulary and phrases he didn't understand. After each episode, he took notes and looked up the meanings of Once David felt more comfortable listening to tech podcasts, he turned his attention to improving his speaking. He knew that simply listening wasn't enough. He needed to practice speaking English out loud. Since his work involved communicating with clients over video calls, David began practicing his speaking skills by recording himself. He would write short summaries of his projects and record himself explaining them in English. Then, he would listen to the recordings and evaluate how clearly he expressed his ideas. David paid attention to his tone, pronunciation, and whether his explanations were easy to follow. This was a great way for him to work on fluency, and over time, he noticed improvements in his ability to express complex ideas. But David didn't stop there. He also started attending online webinars and participating in virtual meetups for software developers. In these webinars, he could listen to other developers speaking in English about their projects and ask questions in real time. This helped him get used to fast-paced conversations and varied accents. David also used these meetups as an opportunity to practice his speaking. He asked questions and even gave short presentations on his own projects. Although it was a bit nerve-wracking at first, he gradually became more comfortable speaking in front of others. Over several months of consistent practice, David's efforts paid off. He became more confident in meetings, was able to contribute more effectively in discussions, and his colleagues noticed his improvement. His ability to explain complex technical topics in clear English made him stand out in his field. David's story shows that by focusing on relevant content in your field, such as industry-related podcasts or webinars, you can improve both your listening and speaking skills while also learning important vocabulary for your profession. Now, let's turn to another example. Emily, a 27-year-old medical researcher. Emily worked in a research lab, and her job involved reading medical journals, writing reports, and presenting her findings to colleagues. While her reading and writing skills were strong, she struggled with listening comprehension, especially when listening to medical lectures or discussions at international conferences. Her colleagues often used medical jargon, and their accents made it even more difficult for Emily to fully understand them. She knew that in order to succeed in her career, she needed to improve her listening skills. Emily started by listening to medical podcasts in English. She didn't pick just any podcasts. She selected those that were specific to her field of medical research. These podcasts discussed the latest medical advancements, research techniques, and breakthroughs in medicine. Emily found that by focusing on topics she was already familiar with, she could easily follow the conversations, even when they used advanced medical vocabulary. She took notes on important terms and repeated them aloud to practice pronunciation. In addition to listening, Emily also made sure to practice her speaking. Since she didn't have many opportunities to speak English outside of her work, Emily decided to start a study group with her colleagues. Every week, the group would meet and discuss a research paper or medical topic in English. Emily found that this was a great way to practice speaking in a more informal setting, and it helped her get used to speaking about complex subjects in English. She wasn't concerned about making mistakes, as the group was supportive and always willing to help. Emily also began watching medical conference videos online. Many of these videos featured experts from around the world presenting their research. Watching these videos helped her get used to different accents and styles of speaking. After watching a presentation, Emily would pause the video and repeat parts of the talk to improve her pronunciation and fluency. This helped her build confidence in her speaking skills, especially when it came to discussing medical topics. As a result of her daily practice, Emily became much more confident in listening to and understanding English in medical settings. She was able to follow complex lectures with ease and actively participate in discussions at conferences. Her ability to communicate clearly in English gave her an edge in her field, and her colleagues recognized her improvement. Emily's story highlights the importance of focusing on content related to your field of interest, practicing with others, and using various resources to improve listening and speaking skills. Next, let's talk about Ben, a 40-year-old business consultant who frequently traveled for work. Ben often had to present ideas to clients, lead workshops, and negotiate contracts, all in English. While his English was generally good, he struggled with listening to fast-paced conversations during meetings with international clients. He found that different accents and speech patterns made it difficult for him to fully understand his clients, especially when they spoke quickly. Ben decided to improve his listening skills by listening to business podcasts. Since he worked in the consulting industry, he focused on podcasts that discussed management strategies, leadership, and negotiation tactics. These topics were relevant to his work, so Ben could improve his vocabulary while also staying up to date on industry trends. He also began to listen to podcasts at different speeds to challenge himself. At first, he listened to the episodes at a slower speed to understand everything clearly, then gradually increased the speed to match the pace of real-life conversations. To improve his speaking, Ben started attending business networking events. These events often involved discussions on current business trends, and Ben used these opportunities to practice his English. He would actively engage with other professionals, asking questions and offering his own opinions. Over time, he felt more comfortable discussing business topics in English and learned to speak more confidently in front of clients. Ben also practiced speaking by participating in virtual meetings with clients. He would ask his colleagues for feedback on his pronunciation and clarity. He found that the more he practiced, the easier it became to express his ideas clearly and concisely, even when the conversation was fast-paced. Through consistent practice and exposure to different business-related content, Ben's listening and speaking skills improved significantly. He became more confident in meetings, was able to understand his clients better, and was able to present his ideas with more clarity. Ben's story demonstrates that consistent exposure to relevant content, combined with real-life practice, can help improve listening and speaking skills in a professional setting. Lastly, let's look at Mark, a 34-year-old lawyer. Mark often had to attend hearings, speak with clients, and present legal arguments in English. While he had strong reading and writing skills, he found it difficult to follow fast legal discussions during court sessions or when negotiating with clients from English-speaking countries. Mark knew that in order to improve his overall communication skills, he had to work on his listening and speaking abilities. Mark decided to focus on legal podcasts and videos. He found that listening to discussions about legal cases, new laws, and court rulings helped him improve his listening comprehension. Since the podcasts were related to his field, he was already familiar with much of the vocabulary, which made it easier for him to follow along. Mark also started watching videos of court hearings and legal debates, which exposed him to different accents and speech patterns. This helped him become more comfortable with the variety of English he might encounter in his legal career. 2. Improve his speaking. Mark started practicing with his colleague, Rachel, who was a native English speaker. They would role-play legal scenarios, such as negotiating contracts or discussing court strategies. This practice helped Mark become more confident in using legal terms in English, and he became better at explaining complex legal concepts to clients. After months of consistent practice, Mark noticed a significant improvement. He was able to understand legal discussions more easily and could express his thoughts clearly in English during meetings and hearings. Mark's story shows how focusing on specialized content and engaging in role-playing exercises can help professionals improve their English listening and speaking skills. Through the stories of David, Emily, Ben, and Mark, we can see that improving English listening and speaking skills takes time and effort. By focusing on relevant content, practicing regularly, and engaging in real-life situations, anyone can make significant progress in their English language journey. Whether it's through listening to industry-specific podcasts, participating in virtual meetings, or practicing with colleagues, the key is consistency. Over time, these small, consistent efforts will lead to big improvements. Let me introduce you to Olivia, a 29-year-old marketing manager who works at a global company. Olivia was in charge of developing marketing campaigns and presenting them to both local and international teams. Even though her English was good, enough for most of her tasks, she often felt nervous during presentations because she was worried about making mistakes in front of her colleagues. As she needed to regularly speak to people from various countries, each with different accents, Olivia knew that improving her listening and speaking skills was essential for her career growth. Olivia decided to focus on a specific challenge she faced during her presentations: understanding different accents. She often found it hard to understand some colleagues from other countries, especially when they spoke quickly or used different terms. To tackle this, Olivia started listening to podcasts from different parts of the world. She picked podcasts that featured speakers with various accents, ranging from British to Australian to American accents. At first, Olivia struggled to understand some of the content, but instead of getting discouraged, she challenged herself by listening to these podcasts on a regular basis. Over time, she became better at recognizing different accents and could follow along more easily. But Olivia didn't stop there. She also worked on her own speaking skills. To practice speaking clearly and confidently, Olivia started recording herself. She would practice giving short marketing presentations in front of the camera and listen to the recordings. This allowed her to assess her pronunciation, tone, and fluency. She also made it a habit to speak with her colleagues in English, whenever possible. This helped her gain more confidence in using English in real-life situations. One of Olivia's key strategies was to set small goals for herself. She focused on improving one aspect of her language skills at a time. For example, she spent 1 month focusing entirely on listening to podcasts during her commute or while doing household chores. Then she dedicated another month to speaking, recording her presentations and practicing them with a colleague. Gradually, Olivia noticed that her confidence grew and she started feeling more comfortable in meetings and during presentations. Her colleagues appreciated her improvement, and Olivia found that she was able to engage in conversations much more easily. Now, let's talk about Henry, a 45-year-old civil engineer. Henry had been working in construction and infrastructure projects for years, but most of his work had been within his own country, where he spoke his native language. However, when his company started taking on international projects, Henry was required to communicate with clients and partners in English. While his technical knowledge was excellent, he struggled to explain complicated engineering concepts in English. This became a problem when he had to present his designs to international clients, as he wasn't able to express himself as clearly as he would have liked. Henry knew that he needed to improve his listening and speaking skills to succeed in these international projects. He decided to focus on improving his technical English, which meant learning the specific terms and expressions used in his field. To do this, he started by listening to engineering podcasts and watching online tutorials in English. He found that by listening to experts in the field, he could learn both new vocabulary and how these terms were used in context. Henry also made sure to take notes on any words or phrases that were unfamiliar, then reviewed them regularly to reinforce his learning. In addition to listening, Henry also practiced speaking by recording himself explaining his engineering projects. At first, he felt awkward speaking in English, especially since his presentations usually involved complex technical language. But Henry was determined to improve. He would practice speaking for a few minutes every day, explaining different parts of his projects. He also used a technique where he would repeat a sentence several times to improve his pronunciation and fluency. This technique helped him become more comfortable with the language and allowed him to speak more confidently during client meetings. Henry's biggest breakthrough came when he began attending international conferences. At these conferences, he had the opportunity to listen to other engineers present their work in English and engage in discussions with colleagues from around the world. This experience helped Henry improve his listening skills, as he was exposed to various accents and different speaking speeds. By participating in discussions and asking questions, Henry was able to practice speaking in real time, which built his confidence even more. With consistent practice, Henry saw huge improvements. He became more confident during client presentations and was able to explain his designs more clearly. His colleagues and clients appreciated his ability to communicate effectively, and Henry felt much more comfortable in meetings and discussions. His experience shows that by focusing on industry-specific content, practicing regularly, and participating in real-world situations, you can greatly improve your language skills. Let's now turn to another story about a 33-year-old teacher named Sophie. Sophie was an English teacher in a secondary school. Even though she was fluent in English and could easily teach her students grammar and vocabulary, she realized that her own listening and speaking skills were not as strong as they could be. She sometimes found it difficult to understand her students' accents, especially in larger multicultural classrooms. Additionally, she wanted to improve her ability to speak more naturally and fluently when interacting with her students and colleagues. Sophie decided to improve her listening and speaking by focusing on everyday conversations. Since she was already an expert in teaching English grammar and vocabulary, she wanted to focus on improving her ability to engage in more casual, natural conversations in English. She began by listening to podcasts that featured interviews with native English speakers. These podcasts often included discussions on various topics, from education to personal development to travel. Sophie found that listening to real-life conversations helped her get used to the pace of spoken English and the various expressions that are commonly used in everyday situations. Sophie also took steps to practice her speaking. To improve her fluency, she started having regular language exchange sessions with a native English speaker. They would meet once a week and have conversations about different topics, such as hobbies, work, and travel. Sophie made sure to take notes during their conversations and review any vocabulary or phrases she didn't understand. This allowed her to continuously build her vocabulary and improve her speaking ability. One of Sophie's most effective strategies was to use shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and try to repeat exactly what they say, mimicking their pronunciation and intonation. Sophie would listen to podcasts or watch videos, then pause and repeat what the speaker had just said. This exercise helped her improve her pronunciation and speaking rhythm. She also used shadowing to practice speaking more confidently by mimicking the tone and fluency of the native speakers she was listening to. Over time, Sophie noticed a huge improvement in her ability to understand different accents and engage in natural, fluent conversations. She felt much more confident when speaking with her students and colleagues, and she also found that her teaching improved because she was better able to communicate with her students. Sophie's story shows that focusing on real-life conversations, using shadowing techniques, and engaging in language exchange can lead to significant improvements in both listening and speaking. Now let's talk about James, a 50-year-old accountant. James had always worked in a small accounting firm, and most of his clients were from his local area. However, as his firm began expanding internationally, James was required to communicate with clients in English. He found that understanding English accents, particularly from clients in North America and Europe, was a challenge. He also had to improve his ability to explain complex financial terms and accounting practices in a clear and concise manner. James decided to focus on improving his listening skills first. He began listening to financial podcasts that discussed accounting, trends, tax laws, and investment strategies. These podcasts were full of industry-specific vocabulary, and James made a point to take notes on unfamiliar terms. He also listened to these podcasts during his daily commute, which helped him make the most of his time. Over time, he became more comfortable with the financial language used in these podcasts, and his listening comprehension improved. To work on his speaking skills, James started practicing by explaining complex financial concepts in English to his colleagues. He would use simple language and try to break down difficult terms so that they could understand. This practice helped him build confidence and improve his ability to explain